Let's start with that main event. Charles Oliveira takes on Islam Makhachev for the UFC lightweight title. Technically vacant, although we kind of all lean in the direction that Charles should be champ. Now, BC, before I throw you the first question about the matchup, we don't have breaking news exactly, but Charles Oliveira did say something at this morning's, their media day over in Abu Dhabi, namely that what he wants to do is after he beats Islam in his mind, he wants to defend the title against Volkanovski in Brazil, and then subsequent to that, fight Volkanovski again for the 145-pound title in Australia. Is he getting a little too big for his britches, or do you love the confidence?
No, I love that, and that's about what he's about. Excuse me, and that's why this transformation here in the second half of his career has been so startling, been so impressive with the win streak, and also the finishes, record-breaking finishes, and it's that mentality. I mean, you watch the countdown show, which, by the way, Luke, they used like a second of my voice in that countdown show. I was like, Aljo shouldn't be the champion. But that was it. You know?
I didn't see the countdown show. Did they put me in it? Are they
they
also run by the people who run MMA fighting?
But look, what the countdown show showed you perfectly, and you already know his story, is this guy's just so hungry. So look, I don't want to go too much further from that, because attached with that breaking news you mentioned was Dana White confirming a couple days back two things. One, that the winner of the Jan O'Malley fight, no matter who it is going to get the next title shot at bantamweight, and we can get into that. But specifically, yes, the rumors are true. Not only is Volkanovski the backup for Saturday's main event, he's also getting the next crack, no matter what happens, at that lightweight title. So I got to get your reaction to that first, because it's one thing for Volkanovski to want to do this, even though he's the pound-for-pound king and champion already, and take the same chance Charles just said he's willing to take. But now the UFC's publicly saying, oh, yeah, he gets it next. Is this the right move? I know you're a big, CKB guy. This is, a potential fight, no disrespect to Makhachev, but a potential fight between Charles and Alex for the belt and maybe a 2-fight series is a wild idea. That's a fan Super Bowl right there.
Yeah, let's be very careful about getting ahead of ourselves here. The MMA gods have their own plans, and they may or may not intersect with all of ours. What I would say is, it's a tough one, right? Because there's two really good ways, I think, of looking at it. One is that, here's on the side that makes sense of the call, which is that Volkanovski is not just your 145-pound champion. He doesn't really have any clear contender at the moment. Yes, you could sort of say El Pantera. What's his name? My brain is not working anymore.
That guy, Rodriguez, Yair.
Yeah, Yair Rodriguez, excuse me, I apologize. You could say that certainly he should be next in line, but I don't know if people are screaming for that fight necessarily. It's a good one, don't get me wrong. I'd be happy to see it.
It's a very good one. Let's be fair
there's nothing wrong with it, but the fans aren't beating down the door to make that one happen necessarily. And on the other side of it, I suppose you could also argue that, look, we're talking about the number one guy in the sport. We're talking about the best fighter alive, who, yes, there are some guys he could be fighting 145, but if you've elevated yourself to being a pound for pound, not just a great, but the number one guy, yeah, you maybe should be getting a title shot at 155 pounds, especially since he's 33, I believe. So the time is kind of now to make some of these moves. On the other side, BC, lightweight is in this. We've talked about it on the show with Chuck, the pregame preview for UFC 280, where we're having this old guard, new guard kind of moment, and it's not happening all at once. It's this slow kind of uneven takeover, and so it's creating some matchmaking issues, but you would imagine there would be somebody else they could really give this to, in particular if Dariush wins or something else like that. I just feel like it may not be necessarily what is best for the other contenders, either 145 and especially 155, but it's probably one of the better fights you could make in the sport, and you got the number one pound-for-pound guy in it.
It's a dream fight.
That alone is probably reason to do it, right?
Dude, it's a freaking dream fight. And by the way, if Makhachev wins and then he fights his Volkanovski, that's also a freaking killer fight. But you know what you wanted to say without saying it there, Luke, is, hey, Volkanovski, instead of fighting the poor man's Chuck Oliveira, and that's, of course, right now Yair Rodriguez, fight the real one. And, if we get to that point, good Lord. And I I didn't say dirt poor, Luke. I just mean he's like, look, there's similarities, all right? But
they're not that similar, really, no.
Well, they're both coming on, and they're aggressive, and they hit an early, not a rut, but, I guess you could say Charles hit a rut. I don't know about Yair. He had a couple missteps. Neither here nor there, Luke. What is here is this main event. I think this adds to the stakes, knowing that the winner is going to get Volkanovski. And Luke, we beat this point down on the pregame preview, but it's the fan in me can't do anything but scream it. This fight, the main event for the vacant lightweight championship, dude, it is such an amazing clash of styles. The X's and O's, the tech side of me, Luke, that, is either not there or doesn't show up a lot at MK, is so damn fired up for this. Damn, what a fight, Luke. I mean, come on. Get all nerdy on me. Penetrate some Dick Man stats through the screen. Tell me something about this fight.
All right. Well, I guess I have a few I want to get to. Let me start with the odds. As it stands today, Charles Oliveira at a plus 160, Islam Makhachev at a minus 190. Now, BC, here's where I want to start this conversation, is on these odds and then the larger picture that's being painted. I hear a lot of accusations that the MMA media has kind of just, anointed Makhachev as the next champion, and they aren't giving Oliveira his credit and acknowledging what he has accomplished. I don't think that assessment is altogether wrong, and I also don't think it's quite... There's a little something to it. It's somewhat overstated. But here's the point I want to make. If you looked at the resume at 155 of Charles Oliveira, it's matter-of-factly better than Islam's. Like, there's no debate there. I'm sorry. Wins and finishes over Poirier. Wins and finishes over Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, but nobody's debating that, Luke. Nobody's actually debating that, though.
So here's my question to you. Is the reason why Makhachev is favored in this contest is because while Oliveira has so many offensive tools, he is a little bit, actually, I would say much more offensively vulnerable, and a guy like Makhachev is very defensively sound, that one knockout loss early in his career notwithstanding.
I'll tell you why. It's a hashtag. It's two words that come together, Luke. You may have heard it. It's catching on these days. It's called Holy Hammer. And, hell, it's a joke, right? No, it's not a joke. In some ways, is Islam Makhachev getting the Khabib rub before he's fully earned it? Well, yeah. I mean, but in another sense, like, he would have fought all these guys, but, a lot of these names were either coming off of big losses on the highest level or in line to fight for the title. It just didn't pan out that way. Yet, what did he win? 11 in a row? So it's not like he just got plucked from, having won 3 of his last 4, and it's like, oh, is it too soon? I mean, the guy freaking earned it. Sometimes, and you saw that in Khabib's career a lot, things just don't go the way of luck in terms of the fights coming together. But what have we seen from him since that loss? Just absolute domination. So from a betting standpoint, is Makhachev getting the benefit of the doubt that he really might be, although not the same fighter, and, good luck if he can ever be as good, but he looks pretty damn good, a great fighter ready to take over what Khabib left behind, which was a dominant title reign. His title reign wasn't long because of circumstances, but damn, it was dominant. Okay, so you can sit here all day and take away from who Islam has not fought yet. But at the end of the day, I think whether he's fought those guys or not, his style is applicable to convince yourself in your mind that it really can be implemented against anyone, even someone as great as Charles Oliveira, who, under the radar has been working on his own wrestling game, and that may have been the key to shutting down Poirier in round 2 to set up the finish. And, you see in the countdown show the training he's doing with absolute legit, that Iranian wrestler that I forgot his name off the top of my head. But, Luke, if you're betting on, if you're taking him as the favorite here, you're betting on that Makhachev style, those guys from Dagestan are motherfuckers, Luke. Their style is to come in there and completely take control of the fight, irregardless of what you're able to do. And obviously, Charles is a little bit different because he's the most dangerous finisher of all time, which only adds to the intrigue of, can Makhachev, if he gets the takedown, work from top position and be nasty within the threat of a next-level submission guy? That's part of why this fight's so great. But even with, maybe he didn't get to fight all the guys you wanted to, and maybe you're not sure if he should be the betting favorite, not you specifically, but anybody in doubt, I think it's okay until we see that we're false here, until we see him lose, to let him ride the momentum of what have been going on lately, and that's Holy Hammer's coming in here and kicking the freaking door in. Luke, I believe, whether he wins or not on Saturday, that there is great potential here that he can dominate this fight and finish the former champion who's trying to regain the belt. Look, he's that freaking good, so we can get past this talk of, like, did he deserve it, blah, blah, blah. He's the betting favorite, dude, okay? And it's for a reason. He's coming the hell on. He's coming on, Luke. All right? You know this.
Fair enough. By the way, irregardless, not a word. Just so that the audience knows that.
On this show it is, Luke, okay? You know what I'm saying?
Is irregardless the official word of the show?
I mean, if they don't like it, they can kiss our ass, Luke, okay? You better believe
Fair
that.
enough. Now, you asked for some numbers. Let's talk about some of these numbers. These are the ones that really stand out to me. Charles Oliveira, by the way, not a combination striker. When you watch him strike, and this is going to sound a little bit like I'm exaggerating it. Again, I have to clarify. I don't mean this in every sense of the description. But, John Jones, when he strikes, BC, he has what I call single strike high variance. He's not a combination striker either. You might see 2, at most 3 punches or 3 strikes in a combo, but it's pretty rare. Usually he just throws 1 at a time. But the reason why he gets away with it is because A, he's got a significant reach. B, his timing is excellent. And C, his ability to not throw any pattern makes him very, very hard to read. Right, so if he throws up high with the left, he'll go down low with the right, and then up high with the right, and then to the middle. And if it's a hooking punch, then it's a linear punch. He's very good about changing that up. Charles Oliveira is like that a lot. He has a different way of striking and a different manner of his stance and everything else. But that kind of idea where he's kind of single pot shotting you and then using that as a way to set up the rest of his offense, that's really what he does. So he lands 3.53 strikes per minute, which is good, not great. It's a fine number. He eats a lot of damage, 3.18 strikes per minute. So he has a positive differential, but it's not very high. Compare that with Islam Makhachev, BC. Now, he has a very low, I would argue, strikes landed per minute, just 2.27. That's not high at all. That's actually very much on the low side, especially for a highly ranked fighter. On the other hand, BC, this is the one that stands out to me. Strikes absorbed per minute, 0.84. 0.84. That is insanely low. They cannot hardly land a glove on this dude. And I know, of course, he has that previous stoppage loss. Okay, since then is what we're talking about. Dude, they can't make contact with him at all. How do you feel like they're going to match up in this particular way? Is Islam going to be so far out he doesn't really want to engage and then he'll just get real close when he has to? Or do you think this will be any kind of pronounced striking battle?
Well, I don't think he can just be far out. And, could he find success shooting from the outside? At some points, yes. But look, I believe he's going to have to get it in the fire to really have his greatest success, which will come in the physicality, the forcing of the clinch, and any method he can or wants to bring the fight to the ground. Obviously, then that ignites whether Oliveira can be as dangerous on his back and provide that threat that might force the fight to its feet. But he's going to have to pass test. I guess the point of what I'm saying is Islam to win this fight, although the idea is to come in and be completely dominant, and for the most part, Khabib did that. Once he got a hold of you, once he started taking you down, it's just downhill from there. I think we know Charles is too good and too dangerous to yield that type of loss. Is it possible? Is it in play? Well, yeah, Makhachev's the favorite. But I think there's going to, not only will he have to be in the light of fire because Oliveira can leap in from the outside as good as anybody and disguise strikes and really take some daring but crazy and smart chances and go for it. I also think he's going to need to close that distance to have his greatest success at the type of physical domination that he's looking to do, Luke. And, I see this, Luke, I don't know if I had necessarily see it in the crystal ball or see it in the excitement of all the combinations going through my brain of what this could or might look like. I'm certainly thinking the idea here is that Makhachev has multiple rounds where he has Oliveira on the ground and is controlling for a lot of it. But I also can see him getting dropped here. Like there's going to be moments when he's going to have to prove just how good his striking is. And not even all the way from an offensive standpoint, although obviously that's the intention. Even from the full defensive standpoint and being able to make those adjustments short of taking him down, he does have a lot to show us. And that's what happens when you have such a one-sided run, which is Makhachev has had. We haven't really seen him have to, in high-stress situations, make those adjustments. But I'm here to tell you, Luke, he's born for this. He's wired for this. I mean, look, in these hype packages, when they play that audio of DC saying, I've been in the gym and no one dominates Khabib on the ground. Well, this guy did in practice many times, like, that full-on accreditation as the next guy. Do you believe that? Do you believe Khabib has trouble with this guy? Because if he has, this guy's winning the championship on Saturday.
I never know what to make of these claims because, again, I'm going to remind folks in the training room, you will see in the course of a year in a training room, you will see your very best guy in the room get his ass beat a few times. Like it will happen. There are times when the very best guy, depending on what he's trying, it's not working. He has an off day, it's not working. Like you will see that. So is it possible that certainly through the course of training, Islam has had days where he's whooped up on Khabib. I don't have any doubt that that's true. That's the nature of training. That wouldn't be scandalous or, frankly, even really all that unusual. The question is, could he do it with regularity? That's a very, very different kind of conversation, and I don't know the answer to that. I want to go back to some of these stats, if I can, staying with the striking, BC, because I have a theory I want to run by you, see what you think. Striking defense, by the way, for Charles Oliveira, 52%, which is fine. It's pretty good. For Islam Makhachev, 68%. That is very high. 70% defense and striking. It's very unheard of to see someone this high level with that kind of AR. This he hasn't faced the elite guys truly, but this further along into his career having a number like that. But here's what I was thinking about. If you look at the kind of takedowns, I don't imagine that Oliveira will shoot a double. He can shoot doubles. It happens. He usually does it off the opponent's cross. But I don't think that's what really is going to happen. He tends to like that body lock space. And that works really well because if he can't find the body lock, he then switches over just sort of to a Muay Thai clinch. I think there's a good chance that Islam could neutralize that, especially if he's quick and has really rehearsed what he wants to do, where if he can find himself in that space, rather than allowing a guy like Islam to, put up the Thai plum and then begin to work, control it with a tight waist and then find his way around it, which would eliminate a lot of that sort of intermediate, offense that he tends to provide and then lead to the takedowns themselves. And we can get to that in just a minute. But I really think that, by the way, for takedowns, so that's clear to folks, you can get folks who can shoot way from the outside and get it, but there's a reason why people don't. As a general rule, for folks who may not know, as a general rule, you should be able to reach out and touch the other person. That's how far you need to be before a good takedown to happen. Any further than that, your chances of succeeding at it go way down from there. Okay.
You also can get askrened, Luke. Okay.
You can get askrened as well. That is something that could happen. So I just feel like he's going to have to be on the outside for a while, but then to your point, he's definitely going to have to get to the inside. And I feel like we're going to see pressure against the fence, takedowns off the body locks, and then after that, BC, is where it gets a little weird for me. And that's the part I just don't really know, because from straight up guard, any guy is hard to submit. And if you look at the tape, certainly against Chandler, it didn't work. From guard, it didn't really work. Against Poirier, from guard, it didn't really work. Even against Kevin Lee, from guard, it didn't really work. It's the other things that he does, the back attacks like he did against Gaethje and then Poirier eventually, and what he does on the ground, BC, what Oliveira does on the ground is what he tries to do is he goes for a triangle up top at first, not to really get it, but to control posture, destabilize someone, make them move. And then he goes to leg entanglements, De La Riva guards, De La Riva varieties from there to either capture the back, to slow them down, disrupt their base. And the question for me is, what does Islam do if that begins to happen? Because then you're playing catch up with Oliveira. What he's going to have to do is find his way to the back or straight up into guard itself along the fence line. And that, to me, as you well understood, would be far easier said than done.
That's the game. That's the game within the game. That is where this fight's going to be won or lost.
Agreed.
True or false?
I agree.
So here's the question. Then I wanted to ask it in a more broader sense. You cut right to the macro in a lot of ways, but or the micro. I don't know. You cut somewhere, Luke. You cut. It cuts like a knife. You know what I mean? Maybe you cut the cheese.
But it feels so right. And
yeah,
I also
for sure.
might have cut the cheese as well.
Is this? I don't think the debate should be can Islam take him down consistently? I think he will. Okay. The real question is, can Charles threaten enough with the submission to force Islam away from his best case scenario when he's on top? I mean, Luke, I think that's when the comparison to Khabib, to me, is most true. I mean, he's dominant on top. He's nasty. He's violent. He cuts sharp angles. He makes aggressive moves. It's almost Khabib-like. Maybe they're not the exact same in how they sort of do the crazy chain moves, Luke, and stay stuck to you. But, I mean, when he gets you in a vulnerable position, he takes the fuck care of you. I mean, he'll beat your ass, okay? Will Charles be able to scare him enough to stay in a comfortable spot on his back where he can then, can Charles' submission not be on an accident or not be in response to a mistake, but will he be able can it be calculated to Charles' submission game, meaning he's not sitting there taking big shots? Can he do enough to dissuade Islam from doing exactly what he does as good as anyone in this game?
I definitely feel like he can tie up Islam, and then, again, we're talking about a guy who doesn't have a lot of ground and pound. Now, when he really wants to unload, he can. But again, he doesn't throw a ton of strikes per minute. He's not very active in that way. This fight could go a while, man. It's really interesting to see. I tend to think if you're Charles Oliveira, your best hope is any kind of clinch break, and then rocking him, and then obviously from there getting an advantageous position, because otherwise he's just not going to make that mistake to give up his back. If you're Islam, the question is, you obviously want the takedown. How do you want to get it? That's really the issue. Do you want a double leg and then put him flat on his back? You're going to have to fight off his guard, which, again, you can do. Flat from guard, Oliveira is certainly not a chump, but he doesn't, it's just, I cannot overstate to you, like if you just watch the world championships in jiu-jitsu, you just hardly ever see someone get submitted from guard. It just doesn't happen at that kind of a level. And so you can do other things with it. And so the question is, what sort of takedown strategy does Islam get and pursue? How much can he maintain that? And honestly, that's really the hard part. I think it's from the body lock where he's going to have to get it, or he's going to have to do the kind of thing that Oliveira and Sterling are good at, BC, which is look like you're going for a takedown, but then just set up back exposure. I think that really is going to be the test. Who can more easily and readily create back exposure? Because I think you would agree with this. If Islam gets Oliveira's back, he's in deep shit. And conversely, if the opposite happens, where the Brazilian gets Islam's back, he's in trouble there. These guys are both suffocating with control. I would obviously argue that from the back, Oliveira is better with submissions. I think that's probably true. But I really think it's going to come down to the takedown strategy and the place which he finds his takedowns from Makhachev.
Oh, I love it. I love imagining what this is going to be like. Luke, when it turns into a sustained striking battle for any length of time, for, you're going to start each round that way, but you get my point here. What's more likely that Islam will show us now that he's on the brightest, highest level against the most dangerous guy? Is it more likely that Islam striking will let you down and he'll end up having to use it basically to try to set up the takedowns? Or is there how strong is the possibility, similar to how it looked like Khabib striking made a leap in the Conor fight? I mean, suddenly he was knocking him down with shots he didn't see coming. Is it more likely that Islam improves upon what we've seen against a higher level opponent, or naturally maybe against that threat kind of doesn't show us much there with the hands?
The thing is this, like as a striker, Oliveira is just way better. Not just from his boxing, but the ranges at which he can compete. Obviously, he can go far outside. He's got devastating leg kicks. Doesn't use them a whole lot, but he harasses with them big time, especially early in fights. Loves it when guys catch their kicks, too, by the way, is another thing. He has that jumping switch knee, that jumping switch kick, which he landed on Lentz and Lee and a bunch of guys. I think he did it on Justin Gaethje a lot as well, to push people back. So I just think what Islam's going to do is try and avoid most of that. I don't really think he wants to play any of that game, because the longer he plays it, I think in general it goes poorly for him. But here's the other side of that equation, BC. This is the part about Charles Oliveira kind of that people love as well, why he's so entertaining. This fucking guy gets hit a lot. He gets hit a lot, dude. He gets rocked all the time. Now, I don't know if Islam is the guy to take advantage of that. So here's what I'm going to say. If it turns into that prolonged striking battle for whatever reason, Oliveira should still win. But it's not like, it's never a slam dunk case with him by virtue of some of those vulnerabilities. Again, I just don't think it's going to come to that, man. I really don't. I think Islam's the question also we haven't even discussed is who's going to pressure the other guy? Who's going to be the one moving into it? Because as we've seen, Islam will kind of take a bit of a step back and then over the course of time begin to pressure. Dude, right out the gate. I'm not saying he comes out like Chimaev, but this, Oliveira comes out hot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he loves to flash the threat early to see how you respond. And then, as we've talked about, when he feels there's even a chance he can finish you, he's going to go for it. It makes the fights crazy. It gets him hurt. But, he's been on a hell of a run that I still question whether, how many times can you get into wars against guys this good? But obviously some of that is dependent, like those we've just been talking about, if Islam's striking can make a leap here and can go to the next level. And look, when you watch him against the inferior level of competition, I mean, when he lands that left cross, which was sharp and on the money to knock out Gleison Tebow with one punch, I get the difference in competition. Is he going to be able to get that strike off and make that a threat against Oliveira?
I don't know. It should be pointed out, Oliveira 74-inch reach, Islam Makhachev 70. Now, Oliveira does have a good jab. you wouldn't really call him a jabber, right? That's just not what he does for
I bet he could.
periods.
I bet he could if he wanted to make that change in his game.
You think he jabs this time around?
I think he could be more of a boxer, but I don't know. I think this ties into what I mentioned earlier, and I did want to bring up again. Luke, are you aware that he hired this special multi-champion Iranian wrestling coach? The guy's name is Alireza Nawai.
I'm vaguely aware of it. Why?
Well, and on the Countdown show, Nawai mentioned that he went and lived and trained at Dagestan, and the big quote that comes out of here is, I've wrestled against guys better than Khabib and Islam and beaten them. It's a lot of machismo here, Luke, but can that make a big difference when you consider that just 2 fights ago it did look like Oliveira's wrestling made a leap, or at least in his intention to use it? I mean, look, he was nasty covering up Poirier's mouth. I mean, he was just all over him and mauling him. And while I don't expect him to have huge offensive wrestling success in this specific matchup, how much can time with a coach with this level of experience allow him to just take what he's already building on and take it to the next level?
I mean, the point is, for me, is that it's very helpful, but it doesn't radically change things. It just can't. He's 33 now? I think Oliveira, maybe 34, something like that.
32, I think. Yeah.
Well, he just had a birthday this week.
Oh, then he just turned 33. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's fresh 33, which is still prime, obviously. But the point I wanted to make was, to get the full benefit of training with a guy like that, you got to be doing that for a long time. It doesn't happen right away. Now, I do think he could probably pick up a few things specific to certain forms of engagement with Makhachev that could prove beneficial. Certain ways to hand fight, certain things that they like to look for, blah, blah, blah. But over the course of time, I mean, just look at the numbers here. Takedown accuracy for Charles Oliveira, 40%. That's a little bit not a real way to measure it by virtue of the fact that some of those takedown opportunities are just things he's looking for to set up the clinch or a choke. But just keep that as it may. Be that as it may. Takedown defense, 57% is just low. It's just low. That's low for a champion level fighter. It's low. Conversely, Islam Makhachev, takedown accuracy, 65%. That is very high. 2 of 3 is fucking high. And then takedown defense, 88%. 88%. By the way, in terms of takedowns attempted, Oliveira 2.46 per 15 minutes. Islam Makhachev 3.41.
Yeah.
Submission attempts 2.9 by Oliveira. Again, some of those are half-hearted ones. And then Makhachev 1.2. Dude, Makhachev doesn't have the names on the resume, but the numbers that he produces are fucking ironclad. They're not super dynamic offensively, but there's just not a lot of weakness to what he shows as well.
All right, then specifically about what I had asked you, what do you think Charles Oliveira is specifically focusing on in the advancement of his wrestling here to best help him in this matchup?
So here's what I think where this could prove beneficial, right? The Russians have their own style of wrestling. The famous Russian tie is when you have 2-on-1 with 2 hands on one arm. It's just sort of an example. Khabib uses a little bit, Islam uses a little bit. I don't mean to bring it up as that's the thing that they're going to be focusing on, but having familiarity with some of the things that they try, particularly from Sambo, would be important. Here's something that folks should understand. One of the things that, judo has wrestling and trips, and wrestling has wrestling and trips, but they focus on the different things different ways and in different proportions. They have different setups for it, but they all tend to have, there's a double leg in judo. It's called the Marote Gari. You can do it. They've since banned it in international competition, but these systems all kind of have the similar answers. One of the things that Sambo stands out for, at least in MMA purposes, is that these guys are very good about going for leg attacks, single legs, off balancing, that kind of a thing, and then switching to trips or throws from there, oftentimes from overhooks, not necessarily from underhooks, and it's weaving back and forth. They try to throw you one way, you balance, they trip you back the next way, and it's not the same as going from a double leg to a single leg to a fireman's carry, which is all in the same kind of family of attacks. They're switching families of attacks while they switch directions. That's a big thing, especially along the fence line. If I was Oliveira, I would want to have a clear sense of that, which, by the way, he likes body locks. He likes body lock trips. He likes those takedowns, but he's probably not going to be as good in that scenario as Islam. So knowing the kinds of chains that Islam is going to attempt, what's Charles Oliveira really good at? Not just in jiu-jitsu, although especially there, but in striking as well. He attacks the transition. He doesn't wait to get to a position before he starts attacking. He attacks it through the transition itself. If I know by training with this coach that if I have my foot here and we're locked up in this way, he's going to go for the trip there. If that fails, he's going to go for the whatever, the other direction. If I can understand what the chain of attacks are going to be, that means I can get my offense ready to attack the transitions between them. That is where it could be hugely beneficial. But just overall ability in those areas, 1, 2, 3 camps is really not going to be enough to make up the difference.
Okay, I'm with you on that one. Damn, this has got me.
How long does this one go? Let me read you average fight time. This is average fight time. Charles Oliveira, 6 minutes, 55 seconds, so about 7 minutes. Islam Makhachev, 9 minutes and 11 seconds. So he takes his time a little bit longer. I think this one goes, I think other part about Oliveira is this. He's like, oh my God, he put away Chandler, he put away Poirier, he put away Gaethje, right. And then the Oliveira one, the Poirier one and then the Kevin Lee one went into the third, but then, finished off pretty quickly within there. I think if you're Islam, take this guy late. This is a guy who's hittable, who comes out with a lot of fury, who I don't think is necessarily, going to gas in that way, but will be a lot less offensively potent the longer. Simple question. The longer this fight goes, who does that favor? Who's it favor?
It favors Makhachev. And what is interesting is most of Charles' fights in this recent insanely amazing run, and the competition seems to keep escalating that he's doing this against, is, it doesn't go late because he doesn't want to wait around and find the answer. He puts himself in crazy situations and oftentimes absorbs the best punch of the opponent and then is able to, figure out a way to recuperate and then finish himself. And, he gets these guys going through all the emotions and then gets them out of there. Makhachev has the perfect offensive attack to stretch this thing out and make it a completely different type of rhythm to where Oliveira is going to have to find late answers. Because look, I still think this one has, greater potential than any of the recent Oliveira fights to potentially go late, but I don't think it's going the distance. So if if there's any good over-under bet you can play with here, we're still going to get a stoppage, but I do like the spirit of what you're saying, where I think it's more likely to come late third or fourth. And Luke, I think I'm here to tell you that I got this, hammer bin behind me, this cabinet, Luke, the largest one right now. The handle says Islam on it. Makhachev is coming on, Luke.
All right,
and
is this your official pick?
I'm telling you right now, bet the under, number one, and number two, you're going to be surprised. Makhachev was going to have to take something on the chin a few times because that's what happens against Oliveira. I'm not saying he's going to shine our face off with his striking, but what he does great, even against the great Charles Oliveira, he's going to have an opportunity to do that. And you just brought up the idea of, because Oliveira takes big chances and he's got all these early finishes, is there a potential where could get exposed late? Again, I don't think he's going to fall apart. I just think this is the wrong opponent, if this happens, if we go into the fourth round, to be against a guy whose sole intention is to take you down, drain your gas tank, and make you less dangerous. I think he's going to do what he does, meaning Islam Makhachev, and that's going to lead to his strikes landing better late and him getting a rear naked choke finish to win the championship. And it's in play, Luke. It's not only in play. The betting oddsmen are telling you it's most likely that it's going to go this way. Now, you can debate all you want whether it's a finish or a decision, but I think we're going to see Makhachev do what he does. I don't think he's Khabib, but I actually don't think he's that crazy far away from that, okay? Yeah, he's got to prove it, dude. He's got a lot to prove to us. But as that stock looks right now in terms of its value, I'm telling you he's coming on, okay? What do I know, right? Well, I'm on a good run myself right now, Luke, okay? And you can't deny that, okay? And it started with Woodley Till.
I'm not sure how good the run is, but I certainly agree with you here. I actually feel like Makhachev is going to win, and I've done a lot of tape study on both. I mean, the thing is this. Oliveira has just beaten better guys, matter-of-factly. And I'm going to say this as well. Oliveira isn't just more well-rounded. He's just got way better offense in the totality of things. But the problem is, in the one area where he doesn't have, perfect offense, certainly would be, obviously wrestling. And then in the grappling, he's very strong. But what he really relies on is he relies on making guys make mistakes, and he relies on kind of putting pressure on them to force them out of position or into bad spots. That's just really, really hard to do against Makhachev. I'm going to lean towards Makhachev here. Obviously, Oliveira winning. He would make us all eat crow. We would talk about how wrong and how stupid we are on Monday, which I'm happy to do. But I agree with you, BC. You're talking about a guy in Makhachev who, again, at this later stage in his career, just doesn't make a lot of errors. Very defensively sound. I don't necessarily know. I think Makhachev's going to try and make it not exciting, which means Oliveira might take even more risk. We'll see how it goes. Certainly, Oliveira is capable of winning, and again, much better resume. There's simply no denying. But that defensive soundness of Makhachev, to me, is the big difference.
Exactly. And here's something not to forget about Oliveira, who you also obviously can't forget that he's taken big chances and almost got stopped by Chandler. And I mean, look, he's there. You can only do that so often. But this
Poirier dropped him too.
Yep, and this will be his. No, he dropped Gaethje. Actually, that was the flip side. But here's the deal here. This is 30.
Gaethje dropped. Well, yes, but go ahead.
This will be his 32nd UFC walk. That's tied for 9th all time. He's been through this. He's had multiple eras of his career already, and to his credit, he found the magic formula, and it's insane what he's doing. But Luke, when somebody does this, and everyone's situation is different, but when somebody does this, which is figure it out and also find that lightning in a bottle of momentum, think McGregor 2014, 15, 16, and think Jorge Masvidal in 2019. Again, everybody's different for different reasons and their age. Glover Teixeira was on a crazy run recently. But eventually you can't keep that up. You just can't. And it's not just how hard the sport is and how close the margin of error is, but you can't keep that up and keep that going and not get it on you once in a while. And he's not going to turn old in this fight, Charles Oliveira, under any circumstance. And he's very, if you believe in him by finish, his history has told you that's also a very good bet, just the same. But when it's over, and remember Masvidal, like when the magic stopped. Now he was older at the time, but it's over, Luke. When that magic stops, this is the perfect type of trap for that magic to get stopped for good. You know exactly what I'm saying, okay?
I know what you're saying.